Good evening, happy 2017, and welcome back. I am calling the Wilmington School Committee meeting of January 11th to order. For our first item, please join me in saluting the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Kim, let the minutes show that all members are present except for Mr. Bjork. And the first item of business on our agenda this evening is the consent agenda. And we've got 6 items to consider. The first is item A, approval of minutes from our last meeting. That's December 14th, 2016, a regular session. Before we approve that, I just wanted to make note under subcommittees, if we could add the word wellness to the comments that Ms. Burns had shared with us regarding the Wilmington Wellness Advisory Group that was held in November, just for clarification. I'll take a motion to approve the minutes from December 14th. Mrs. Bonish, second, Mr. Talbot. All those in favor? That would be unanimous. The second item is an approval of an Alliance Energy donation to the Woburn Street School of $500. Mrs. Benton, would you like to add anything?
We'd like to acknowledge ExxonMobil Education Alliance Program for donating $500 to the Woburn Street School to be used to purchase technology items that support science.
Great. Thank you. I'll take a motion to accept that donation. So Mrs. Kane, a second. Second. Mrs. Burns, thank you. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Okay, we have some warrants. We have warrants G406, R208, R209, L18, Food Service 13, 14, and 15. Can I have a motion to approve those warrants, please? Mrs. Burns, second. Mr. Mullis. All those in favor? Thank you. The next item, warrants for payroll week ending December 7th, 2016, December 21st, 2016, and January 4th, 2017. Can I have a motion to approve the payroll, please? Mrs. Bonish, second. Mr. Talbot, thank you. All those in favor? And we have 1 abstention, Mrs. Kane. And then the next 2 I'm going to combine. We have warrant CB04, we have SPED 08 and SPED 09. Can I have a motion to approve those warrants, please? Mrs. Kane, second by Mrs. Bonish. All those in favor? We have, Mr. Mullis, okay, thank you. 1 abstention, Mrs. Burns. Thank you. Student representative report.
See you all again. Seems like forever. Hope you all had a good holiday and a happy new year. Wilmington High School is back in full swing, and we're busy as ever. First off, the class of 2017 is holding a fundraiser at Fuddruckers on Thursday the 12th from 5 to 8 p.m. You must have a flyer in order for a percentage of your bill to go to the fundraiser, and that can be picked up at the guidance office. The drama club is also beginning to get in gear for the spring musical, which will be Legally Blonde, with a meeting on Monday, January 23rd, for the opportunity to learn more about being involved with the production. Ski club registration is now open to students, running every Tuesday until February 7th. The environmental club also is continuing to raffle off 1 carpool parking spot in the teachers' parking lot in order to help promote a healthier environment and a cleaner way to get to school. Finally, all this is happening with mid-years beginning next Tuesday, so hopefully all students are studying hard. And that's all I have for you tonight, so thank you so much.
Great, thank you very much. Mrs. Bonish.
So for the Fuddruckers, can someone print that at home, or do they have to come here and get the?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm sure you could look online, though, and find it.
I think it is online.
Okay.
You can.
I just want to.
Perfect. That would be easier for families.
Great. Any other questions for Ms. Bennett Kim? No? Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Our next item of business is the superintendent's report.
I have no items under the superintendent's report this evening. How's that?
Fabulous. That is fabulous. No old business. Seeing no old business, let's move right on to new business, please.
Why don't you do this first?
Okay. Okay. And under new business, our first item is the Project 351 Ambassador. I'm going to turn that over to Superintendent Benton.
Thank you. Back in 2001, Governor Deval Patrick founded a program entitled Project 351. It was his idea to gather together a representative from every middle school in Massachusetts and have them do a day of service on the weekend of Martin Luther King Jr. holiday. Every year, the staff at the middle school has looked at the 8th grade students and has chosen a student that they feel epitomizes the characteristics that Governor Patrick put forth back in 2011. Leaders who dream, dedicate, persevere, collaborate, create, inspire, and are willing to do things to leave a mark on their community. And I'm pleased to announce that this year it was a unanimous vote to award the Project 351 Ambassador to Allison Broussard. Allison is a student in the 8th grade who was an excellent student academically, but she has consistently worked hard and produces excellent grades. She has a conscientious work ethic combined with a genuine intuitiveness and interest in learning that fosters a well-rounded education. Allison is not only respected by all of the students and teachers, but also receives respect in return from both groups. She is a responsible member of the Wilmington Middle School community, and she is going to be representing us very proudly next Sunday. Lynn Curtis, the grade 8 Discovery Science teacher, has volunteered to be Allie's mentor and will be going with her into Boston that day. So I'd like to ask our interim principal, Kevin Walsh, to come down, and we have a certificate. Allie, if you would come up to present to Allie. I need to do a picture. Now I'm going to get you down, looking down. Hold on for 1 second. Sorry. One second. Well, hold on. Here we go. Now, could I ask Mr. and Mrs. Broussard to join us? Congratulations. Ready? Thank you. Ellie, we hope you'll come back at a future meeting and tell us all about your day. Thank you. Congratulations. Perfect.
Oh, that's great, thank you. Okay, our next item is the personnel report.
So attached, you will find an updated personnel report of all the hires since the beginning of the school year, or the last 2 months anyway. Any questions?
Just for clarification, I don't think I've ever seen a position labeled IME. Can you clarify what that position is?
Where,
Right.
Joshing in the west?
yeah.
Those 3 columns are under position, so it's a teacher, it's a ed assistant, and the reason is.
Oh, is it IEP
because-
referencing
Yeah,
the
that's
reason for the hire?
in the
Oh,
IEP,
gotcha,
yeah,
I'm
sorry,
Fine.
yeah,
No,
that's
that's
3
fine, that
columns.
helps.
Yep.
I was going to say, well, I don't know what that position is.
It's a new one. Any other questions or comments regarding the personnel report? No? Okay. Seeing no questions or further discussion, we'll move along. The next item is the fiscal year 17 financial status report.
would like you to acknowledge Mr. Ruggiero.
Thank you. In front of you is the financial report as of January 3rd of 2017. Our appropriations, $45,468. We've spent and encumbered through January 3rd, $37,208,448, leaving an unencumbered or remaining balance as of that date of $437,020. We are tracking the budget very closely. We're very comfortable with where we are and where we will end the year. So, and we're continuing. Every day we kind of look through it and make sure that spending is tracking as it should. So,
Any questions or comments on the fiscal year 17 financial report? Mrs. Burns.
Just out of curiosity, we've had a lot of unexpected things happen. It's just what it is. I don't know if this is a fair question, but, and I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to ask it as I'd like to, but I'm happy to hear that we are in a good position here and you're monitoring it closely, but for those unexpected pieces, can you describe like where the leeway is for those unanticipated possible expenses, the flexibility we have as a district or don't have?
sure.
And what it is that you may be more cumbersome. In all honesty, we haven't had much discussion with everything that's, going on with just the holidays and everything, especially with the upcoming budget as well. I guess I want to ask at this point where your biggest concerns may lie. I mean, granted, the circuit breaker is always cumbersome and a surprise as to what we'll actually receive as a district, as well as homeless transportation piece. But is there any other that you anticipate, or Superintendent Benton, are just guarded about?
I think, that we did mention, October 3rd, we put a budget freeze in place for the district with only non-discretionary spending is allowed. All purchase orders are signed off by both me and the superintendent looks at them. So we're controlling costs that way. If something has to be purchased, yes, naturally, but it's things that we can hold off on, we hold off on. The superintendent's looking at all the contracts we currently have in place and seeing what we can do to mitigate them a little bit, if you will. So work on that. Superintendent and I meet, if not every day, on budget stuff, every other day, just to talk about different things. Circuit breaker right now, the 9C cuts did not impact that, so we should track okay to get what we kind of anticipated we would get. You're right, there's some unexpected things that we just have to monitor, and we're trying to work on other things to keep our spending under control. We did have, with everything that went on, we do have some room from as people resign or retire, the difference between the pay that the new people come in, much fewer years of service and so forth. So there's some savings that just naturally occur. So and we track that regularly as well, so to make sure that we're okay. And right now, there's nothing out there that would say we need to go to you guys and say that we have an issue. So we're tracking it. Who knows that if something else comes up, we may have to, but right now we're okay.
Great, great. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments, concerns? No?
I just want to acknowledge, because of the work that Mr. Ruggiero is doing, because he's right. I mean, and he's sick of seeing me every day, but he will not spend any money unless it is targeted and there's a reason for it, and we have combed the budget and brought back as many funds as we can. So I feel very confident that we will be ending the year in the black.
As do I. I'd like to keep my track record going.
Exactly. Great, thank you.
Thank you, Bill,
Thank you very much.
for all your work.
Okay, next I believe we have a presentation on PBIS. And I think we have Alice LeGrand, our Coordinator of Behavioral Health and Social Emotional Support, doing the presentation
And
for us.
Mr. Gallagher.
And Mr. Gallagher. Okay, we got a tag team here.
So I just want to remind the community that last year that Wilmington adopted the Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports Initiative, Alice and Sean have taken the lead of it, along with Jen Mahan, and this night is to just give an update on what's been going on. And I did ask them to focus a little bit on the middle school because we have the middle school administration with us this evening. A lot of exciting, positive things have been going on there for the past couple of weeks, and we want to share with you the programs that they brought in, so.
Great. All right, well, thank you very much. Yeah, we're kind of just going to give an overview of where we're at, what PBIS is, because that's a term that's been thrown out there a lot. And I had the great fortune of working, with Kevin in the middle school administration for about a month or so. And we brought, I think, a lot of good aspects to the middle school, which we'll report out towards the end of the presentation. So this kind of, I just want to show a short video which kind of, I think, shows a lot of the initiatives that we have here in Wilmington, especially with technology and some of the aspects. So this quick video is in the future for our first grades, 10 years from now, kind of what the world is going to kind of look like for people. Just kind of, as we move forward with education, and you look, this isn't, 50 years from now, there's a lot of these initiatives, or a lot of the changes are happening, from the time these first graders that we are teaching right now, by the time they graduate. So it's rapid changes. One of the pieces that I really wanted to show and really touch upon is that that second piece where depression will be the second highest cause of disease to burden the middle class countries, after obesity. So when we start looking at the emphasis on social emotional health and giving students opportunities in a safe environment to deal with a lot of issues with the social emotional aspect, this is kind of what we're talking about with the PBIS. So as we know, it's a school-wide program that aims to educate our students in a positive, safe learning environment. And that's what we would always push and emphasize with parents is, although their students are always going to deal with some adversity, in school, it's a controlled, safe environment, and work with students to kind of get through some of that adversity. So as we look at this, it's the focus on respect, responsibility, reliability, safety, and tolerance. And really, it's taken a collaborative approach with the administration, staff, parents, community, guardians, and really looking at creating a positive school culture that's consistent for two areas. One, we want all of our students to achieve their academic potential. That's an emphasis. But on the same side of that now is also their social and emotional potential. So each student interaction with adults is a learning opportunity for the students. And that's kind of like a general overview of the program and a lot of the work that goes into it. And I'll hand this off to Alice and kind of look at what the DESE is showing, the tiered approach.
Sure. I'm sure everybody's kind of seen the pyramid approach, and for Massachusetts, we call this the Massachusetts Tiered Systems of Support. It was really actually PBIS's triangle, and a lot of the states have kind of copied that, so to speak. But PBIS really looks at integrating the two and to address the needs of all students. So they don't really view academic interventions and behavioral interventions as something that's separate. And it really, the school kind of forms a team to develop all of the interventions for all students using both of them together, that they're not separate. And when you look at the Department of Ed standards, they're beginning to incorporate all the social emotional learning standards into the academic standards. They at one point were separate, and there will continue to be some that are separate, but they've begun to actually integrate them into the standards. And so when we look at the bottom 80% of students, the initial stages of PBIS, which I'll talk about in a second, is geared towards catching all students, but most of that 80% is really kind of who they're targeted at initially, to trying to get the peer group, the positive peer group, to buy into the system, to buy into the culture change, and then develop systems to address the upper 15 to 20% of students, and using teams to do that. And I'll talk about how to do that in a second. Why PBIS? People kind of always ask, why are we doing this versus something else? It's not a curriculum, per se. PBIS is something that is developed. You form a team at a school. The team actually sets kind of the core values of their beliefs. What do they want their students to kind of leave their building knowing? Things like respect. What does respect look like? What does resilience look like? And kind of you frame all of the behavioral expectations around those core values. And really the team has put a lot of work this year into identifying kind of what do we really want our kids to be able to do and know leaving here as people, also academically and behaviorally, but kind of on the root of it, what do we want them to be able to do? Have responsibility, have a sense of respect, have a sense of resilience, kind of try hard when things are difficult. How do you do that? How do you develop the resources to do that? And that's in line with where the Department of Ed is at this point, that they're not separate anymore, that we have to find a way to incorporate them as the level of mental illness and anxiety and depression kind of continue to climb in all of our communities. The other piece about PBIS is it's moving away from a punishment kind of punitive model. It's really teaching what we want students to know, and I think we take that for granted a lot of the times. The teams will actually break down across settings, looking at respect, kind of what does respect look like in a classroom? What does it look like on the bus? What does it look like at the cafeteria versus being out at recess? All of those kind of things that we sometimes take for granted, which that 20% of kids at the upper level of the tiers start to fall apart with, because they don't necessarily have the explicit understanding of what they should be doing during those settings, just as an example. And teaching that explicitly to kids from the time they enter school actually supports those students, as well as the rest of the students that might be able to do it most of the time, but not all of the time. It is evidence-based. It's based out of University of Connecticut. There's a lot of research about it. And it is one of the few programs, or kind of one of the few orientations, that actually shows long-term change. School climate change, long-term behavioral change, reduction in expulsions, suspensions, increased time on learning, students having kind of longer-term change, more so than really any other approach that we've been able to kind of develop at this par. And it's based on learning strategies, learning skills, versus don't do that, don't do this. It's kind of supporting students, rewarding staff, rewarding the culture, the interactions among the staff and the students to kind of affect change. So this is kind of where we are at this point. The decision was made that they were going to kind of do half the district this year. and half next year. The Phase 1 schools, the schools that are currently on really the beginning stages of meeting probably every other week approximately, depending on the school, is the Boutwell, Shawsheen, West, and Middle School. They've developed school-wide teams. They've worked through identifying their core values. Most of them have worked through kind of identifying what their, what's called a behavior matrix in PBIS, but what is the behavioral expectations that you want across settings, and beginning the stages of developing the lesson plans to actually teach them explicitly to students across all grade levels. And then the next thing is really kind of working into the recognition system. So if the students demonstrate that, how do we make them maintain that behavior? How do we keep that going in a positive way? Those kids that do it all the time, a lot of times get lost. It's the kids that don't do a lot, do what you want only a few times here and there that sometimes get recognized, when the kids that do it all the time don't necessarily get recognized. It's really about kind of empowering students to make the environment more positive so that they want to do better, because everybody around them wants to do better. It's really kind of a culture shift for the schools. The Phase 2 schools are really for next year. I meet with them monthly, and we kind of go through developing the readiness for PBIS, because it is a philosophy shift, and some people are just not necessarily familiar with the idea behind it and what the kind of stages, there are stages of PBIS implementation. And the Phase 2 schools are at different places depending on the school and their readiness to do that, but that's really what this year is working on for them, to identify their school-wide teams, what would that look like, and identifying the needs of the school, because each school's needs, also depending on age of the children in the building, are going to be very, very different in terms of what kinds of supports they would need to implement PBIS for next year, potentially.
So, kind of looking at the positive shift, and we've implemented just some, and I just want to credit once again, you know, you talk about the collaboration piece, so we work with the teachers, the administration, but the PAC at the middle school was essential in kind of beginning changing the culture, you know, for the students and the staff. So we ended up bringing in Ed Garrity, who was a very positive, dynamic speaker about, you know, making your mark and working. He had 3 assemblies with every grade, and then we identified about 80 student leaders from grade 6 to grade 8, and he had a nice session with them on how they can start making big changes down the road, and looking at, you know, working with the administration and having student input on, you know, some policy changes, but really some of the little things that they can start to do around the school, about positive messages, you know, setting examples, getting more involvement from the student input and the student, you know, positive culture. The other piece of this is we want to follow up not only with the students, which was great, and once again I want to credit the administration at the middle school. I want to credit the teachers, and it was just a great month of December, I think, for the middle school, with a lot of positive things that went on, you know, with this training. But we do plan on Ed Garrity coming back for a parent session at night to kind of bring it all, you know, twofold, where the parents then get involved on, you know, a positive culture and what they can do to support a lot of the initiatives that we're grassroots startup at the middle school. So it was, I think it was a great, you know, a great day for everybody. But just being in the middle school for a month and working with everybody, I left really, you know, I mean, I guess it's not hard. I get fired up and energetic, but I felt really good about some of the work that's already begun. And when you give students some responsibility, some opportunities to show leadership, they take it and they run with it, and that's what I saw. I mean, we had students talking about the book that was passed out and all of that. And I know Alice wants to just touch base as we move forward into next year, some of the things that we plan on doing.
Yep, they've actually, the middle school administration has actually followed up with all those 80 students and had 2 separate sessions about planning about what they would like to do going forward. And really the intent of Ed Garrity and the sessions was to give students kind of that sense of personal responsibility and identifying how powerful being a leader is in the building, which can be both positive and negative, sometimes leadership, you know, with kids of that age group. And having them understand that they have a choice. They have their own kind of personal sense of responsibility about they want things to be different different, then they have to be part of it. And the administration's done a great job kind of jumping on that and have some plans, I know, for the spring in terms of that group. A couple of other things just around that. I think, at some point we have to do some parent information sessions once PBIS gets a little farther along so that they understand once those behavior matrices are completed, and the goal being obviously that parents will be aware of what the expectations are at school and, the culture shift in the building and what kind of really we're trying to do, because I think a lot of parents aren't familiar with PBIS either. We also, Jen Mahan and I wrote a grant for the Safe and Supportive Schools grant, which is about $17,000, but it looks at other ways to kind of incorporate social emotional learning and PBIS being part of this action plan for this year, and then implementation kind of for next year, which is another piece both at the middle and high school level, so that we can look at kind of what are the things that we need to do to support social emotional learning. And the last that the middle school has been able to do, we were able to get what's called the MARC curriculum, the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center's bullying prevention program from Bridgewater State University to use as sessions kind of going forward with students at the middle school level, hopefully eventually the high school, for the spring semester. So to kind of be a little bit more preventative so students understand their level of personal responsibility, the impact that their actions, behaviors have on others, kind of turning it around. It's kind of our hope, change the culture a bit from, being consequence-oriented, which I think schools are naturally, to being more preventative.
Great.
There you go.
Thank you very
All
much
right,
for the
you're very welcome.
presentation. Any questions, or Mrs. Burns and then Mr. Talbot?
I'll only ask a couple, and then if you don't mind coming back to me before you wrap it up, because I don't want to take away any time from other members. Can I ask, are you using the collaborative problem-solving approach at the middle school? Is it incorporated into the PBIS piece as a resource?
It will be. So
Okay.
PBIS at this point is really at, even in the schools that are phase one or at the initial implementation, initial kind of beginning stage before they've even implemented it. It takes really, to be honest, about 2 to 3 years to get to the place where it's kind of full implementation. The stage at this point is developing kind of the lesson plans to teach the behavioral expectations, and that's where CPS will come in,
Okay.
the collaborative problem solving.
All right,
will
because
come
I
in.
would
Yep.
still very much like to
Oh, yeah.
drive that
Yep.
piece, because
They're
I think.
not separate.
Well,
Yep.
exactly, and
Yep.
and I could see how it just fits like a
Yes.
puzzle piece together to
Yep.
support,
All
supporting
students.
each
Yep.
initiative
Yep.
Exactly.
in that. What's the buy-in from the staff like? Because I think without the consistency piece, which I think is a critical part of PBIS being successful, buy-in of staff is critical for the consistency
It
alone.
is, yep. And the research about PBIS is
Yep.
younger grades, you get more buy-in automatically just because of the nature of being a teacher with younger students. And so the middle and high school tend to always be the challenge for implementation. And one of the things that PBIS does in terms of their rollout is actually does their recognition system, or the good jobs, the pause, kind of the model for reinforcing the good behavior first on the teachers. And the reason they kind of develop a teacher recognition system is to show people that, one, it's doable, two, it's fun and it's enjoyable, and if adults like it, kids will like it. And I think sometimes kind of having that experience of being on the other end, receiving end of positive praise even, makes people go, oh yeah, they are still 11, they are still 12, they are still kids. And so it kind of sets the stage for them to be able to and want to actually implement it as a larger school community.
What type of resources and supports are there for staff to hone their skills?
So
It's not an overnight kind of like,
no,
okay,
it's
we'll do
not an
this,
overnight
you
thing.
know.
Yep. So when the rollout goes to the entire staff, at this point, that's still at the team level with some people kind of consulting to it, there will be training. There'll be training about how to redirect a student using positive language. There'll be training about being more aware of body language and being aware of the kinds of interactions that you have with kids. The statement at the beginning that kind of every interaction is an opportunity to learn is really true. And so I think those are things that sometimes we take for granted in the course of a day. That's really where a lot of the training is going to come in. Once we roll out the behavioral expectations, roll out the lessons to go with it, and then the little things that people need to be
In my
doing.
experience in the upper grades is when you develop a forum for students to take leadership roles, to have an active part in the day-to-day operations, the staff starts to see the students in a different light, because now the students just by giving them some opportunities to have the leadership, they're already seen as mature, taking responsibility, and it's a whole different kind of approach to everything, too.
I just want to ensure, I think, and the reason of asking that is that with what our teachers and staff have before them with everything else, to psychologically change the methodology as to how they interact
Sure.
can be very challenging. And I want it to be a smooth transition with a lot of support and resources for whenever, that they can, as whether colleagues together,
And the other piece that, everything isn't separate, but when you start looking at a 21st century learning environment, blended learning, the use of technology is gonna lend itself within those classrooms, giving students different opportunities to show their learning. So it all ties in, because now the frustrated student who, may have trouble writing has another venue to show his skill set or her skill set. And it all really ties in too, to everything.
And the teams at each building will actually be key in also supporting that work. So, I mean, I'm certainly there and I'm on every team. But, the team that kind of, is in the building that feels strongly about this and will be kind of the leaders of it in the building and colleagues' resources.
Thank you.
Yep.
Awesome.
Mr. Talbot, I saw your hand.
Yes. So I guess one of my questions about dealing with kids and, I guess, behavioral issues and things like that. Have we looked into like yoga for kids? I've seen some programs out there, some school systems that do use that. It's gone very well for them to kind of manage the bad behavior.
I know that, from meeting with the teachers at IEP meetings as well as the clinical staff, which I meet with more consistently, I know teachers in classrooms are using Go Noodle, which is also kind of an idea of brain breaks and moving around, and it's a free kind of internet resource. Some of it is yoga-based, some of it just kind of movement-based with that idea. A lot of the clinical staff in the district do mindfulness with students, yoga, meditation being part of that as well. And I know that there are a couple of substantially separate classrooms where that's a piece of it as well.
So
in the
it's
district.
only in like certain schools, certain
Well,
classes?
I'm saying that from my point of view, I would think it's probably more dependent on the teacher's orientation, but there's a fair amount that I've been exposed to in my limited time that are definitely utilizing that. I think there's always room for more. I also know that there's been some consultants that have done school-wide, at least I believe at the North, lessons on mindfulness. I think Teresa Wiggins at one point was, and I know she's worked with some classroom teachers that have expressed an interest in implementing that regularly in their classrooms as well. But I think it's a great resource.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add, in addition, the phys ed health teachers are all incorporating that into their curriculum, so that all students, we have a wonderful yoga studio upstairs at the high school, and it's very popular, but it's integrated in all of the PE at each grade level.
And even for like the elementary, I mean, I know
Yes.
it's better to get them kind of started young than as opposed to older.
Yes,
and-
Laura Stinson's leading the charge with that.
Okay, good, yeah.
Movement before school starts. They have that little movement before activity.
Mrs. Kane.
My 21-year-old 21-month-old granddaughter just started her yoga this week. So obviously, it's going through the library. So obviously, that's important. I was just curious as to when you were talking about the teachers would be recognized, who would be doing that recognition of the teachers? Is it the students recognizing them, other adults in the building?
Initially, it's
How
the
does that
staff,
work?
amongst the staff. So kind of an awareness of being helpful. And it's little things like that that kind of sets the stage for staff doing it to students. Not taking those little things for granted that students do all the time that we do. That student that sits in your class every day and is 100% on 100% on target should get rewarded for being on target, because they are a leader by being on target every day and doing what they need to do. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that and kind of creating an atmosphere where we focus more on the positive. And that's really the intent with it, start with a recognition system with the teachers that ultimately will, when they develop the one for the students, it's more comfortable to actually
Like
begin
some of
doing.
those, like the great emails that you get from a parent regarding a teacher, those would be read at faculty meetings for everybody to hear. So some of those thank yous and the extra efforts that faculty does behind closed doors, what ends up happening is you start promoting that at faculty meetings, so people really hear that. And then eventually, you start recognizing faculty, at school committee and things of that nature. But it's really empowering.
Now, we talked about the fact that he saw, brought 80 students he's working with specifically. What happens to the rest of is it 80 out of the entire school?
It is, that was,
It's initial,
yeah,
right.
initially, that was the number that he chose, and it was part of the presentation, so we took advantage of it.
Right.
And then the plan for the middle school administration, not to speak for them, but is to kind of create expand that a bit
Right.
inside the building at each
Like a
level.
student
each
leadership
level. Yep.
council for each grade. So that was the initial, the 80 was the initial for this day, but students that may have been absent or want to take more of a leadership role, they're going to have the opportunity to do that.
Okay, I hope that before the end of this year, they'll be coming back again, because I think this is a lot to think about. I need to think about it. And I had just had one other question. When it comes time to do the parents and the community, could you just let us know?
Oh, yeah.
When those are, so that if we are able to attend, maybe we could
Certainly.
see it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That would be great.
It sounds really fascinating to me. But, yeah.
Thank you. Mrs. Burns, I'll come back to you.
No, that's fine, I don't mind waiting my turn.
Yeah, no, I'm set, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Just a last question. What is the biggest challenge in rolling something out of this size in a school district?
I think in any school district, it's exactly what you said, buy-in. I
Buy-in,
think it's the culture shift, and it's not because people don't want to do it, but I think it's just not maybe something they thought of or are comfortable with.
Well, it's a nuance.
Yeah, it's new,
Right.
What are you
Yep.
thinking, when specifically were you kind of thinking about setting up those parent sessions? Because I would think that you may want to introduce it and then kind of go back and support it, and so
Yep.
that they have a better, when their kids are coming home with, we did this and this is
Right.
what, just to
Yep.
kind of try to get a stronger.
So each of the schools are in a slightly different place because the
Right.
teams, kind of are tackling different things, and what the expectations at the middle school versus like the Boutwell are very different. I ultimately would kind of like to do a larger district-wide launch for everybody when most of the behavior matrices, just before it's rolled out, which I would expect would be very late spring to the students. And then I would hope that the buildings would incorporate it as part of their open house night right out of the gate at the beginning of the fall as well, to have a more individualized, because the one at the district level will be a little more general. And I'm sure parents are gonna have more specific questions
Perfect.
come the beginning of the year.
I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Sure.
Right?
Any other questions or comments? Seeing none. Thank you very much for the presentation. It was very helpful. All right, our next item of business, we have the SEAM annual report and audit.
The law calls for you to receive the SEAM annual report and audit every year. Congratulations to Kathy Lassen, the executive director. There are no findings in the audit this year, and SEAM is doing quite well.
Any questions regarding the SEAM findings? Mrs. Hines?
Who is representing us now?
I am.
You, okay, just wanted to verify that with the information. And I have to say, this is going to be one of the most comprehensive, but easily read annual reports I've ever, I think, received from SEAM. So
I will tell Kathy.
it's great. Thank you.
Okay, next we have a presentation from the May Institute. Mrs.
Yes.
Benton, would you like to-
So I'm going to invite the May Center School Program Director, Jamie Marsh, and the Executive Vice President of Educational Service Division, Paula Raymond, up to the table. They have a presentation for you. Under Mass General Laws, Chapter 76, when a private school comes into a community, the local school committee must approve the school. And this, so for example, when Abundant Life came in years ago, the school committee approved it. If another school came in, you'd be asked to approve it. And so the May Institute has been around for a long time. They've been in Reuben, and they are moving and are going to talk about their program and where they're moving this evening. So we want to welcome them and
Thank you.
turn it over to them.
I just wanted to thank Superintendent Benton, as well as the committee members, for allowing us to join you this evening. I promised Mrs. Benton that we would be very brief, so we are going to do our best to meet that goal. as she shared, I'm Pam Raymond. I'm the Vice President of Educational Services for the May. I've been with the May Institute for almost 7 years. This is my colleague, Jamie March. She is the director of our Woburn School, and she's been with the May for almost 17 years, so a lot of tenure here. So we're here tonight seeking committee approval because we are relocating our school that's currently in Woburn to the town of Wilmington. Our school is licensed by the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and has been since its inception 11 years ago. The Woburn School has been in existence for 11 years. It's one of our 4 special education schools that's licensed and operating in Massachusetts. And founded in 1955, the May Institute is a nonprofit organization that serves hundreds of kids and adults with autism, developmental disabilities, brain injuries, and other related disorders throughout the Commonwealth. So since we're unable to bring you to our school this evening, we decided that we would spend a few minutes bringing our school to you. So we have a very brief 3-minute video we'd like to share with you just to give you a brief glimpse into our amazing school. Are you able to hit the? Yeah. Well, it's going to be quick. Okay. All that preparation.
My goal for every single child that walks through our door is for them to be the best person that they can be. So to really be able to participate in their full day, to build relationships, to be happy. So really, you know, a lot of times we're asking the kids all day long to do things that are challenging for them. So we want to make sure that we're building their skills in a way that's slow and manageable, but it's pushing them forward so that they're having a lot of success. The day is really structured, and so the kids are here until from 8:30 to 3, and during that time they really are going just nonstop, and so they're working on, they'll have some schoolwork times that are broken down. There's a lot of community time built in, especially for the older kids. So in the morning they're typically going to some sites and doing some work tasks, and we have some great community agencies that job sites that we're working with just to really give the kids the opportunity to have that work experience, be interacting out in the world, and really starting to build some work skills. We have dedicated staff. The expertise in autism is unmatched. Our staff are trained. The expertise in ABA also unmatched, and so we have the ability to have our own consultation. We have a BCBA that's on staff that has been May staff for 15 years and brings all of that experience and is able to really work and collaborate with the classroom staff and make sure that the kids are making progress, not only for their behaviors, but at school, out in the community, and working with the families and making sure that what we're doing here is really translating over in a way that's meaningful.
There's multiple students here, and some may be working on a lot of the same goals, but each of the teaching procedures and each of the support plans are very individualized for every single student.
I've been able to see some of the students grow, some students who had no communication skills, and now they're interacting with staff and students on a regular basis, as well as gaining those independent skills that they're going to need when they leave here.
What we want is for the students to be able to be true participants in their life. So a lot of times for the families it's challenging because they are working their whole life around what that child needs, and so they don't have the ability always to do things like participate in family meals or go out to a restaurant for dinner or help with shopping or do chores like maybe their siblings are doing. And so we want to match their goals and work on those things so that every day is easier at home and they're doing better at school and they're making great gains.
We give families hope, we give them positive energy, and we want to help not only the family succeed as a whole, but also the individual.
Okay, Jamie, you wanted to talk a little bit more about that?
So as you heard in the video, individualized programming is an important part of what we do every day. So our curriculum coordinator and our director of education train our staff annually in the Massachusetts frameworks and the Common Core standards, utilizing training materials from ESE. Classroom teachers build those standards into the individual student programs, and that, along with assessment, information and input from the families shapes each child's plan for skill development. Families are involved through many ways in our program. We have an open door policy. Staff write very detailed daily notes that go back and forth. They do regularly scheduled phone contacts, and we do quarterly progress reports as well. And student progress is tracked through daily data collection. We have a lot of systems in place to make sure that things are being reviewed regularly and that things can be updated as they're needed. And we have a great team that work really hard to ensure that each student is making progress with their individual areas of need and really being able to move forward in every way. And I wanted to thank everybody for taking time to learn a little bit about our school.
So can you tell us where you'd like to move to?
Yes, we have found a location. It's 50 Concord Street, I think, here in Wilmington. It is a Cummings property, and that's our current landlord as well. So we were able to work with them to find a better place for our school, a much nicer, more centralized place for our students. Like I said, we've had that school there for 11 years, and that was not the original intent, was for it to be a temporary place. And as things happen, it's now been 11, almost 12 years, and we're really ready to move. And we found this really great property here in Wilmington, and so we're excited to be able to join.
Approximately?
23 kids.
Mrs. Kane?
Thank you. What is your process for having students come to your school?
They're referred by school districts.
Okay.
And so it's a decision that the school district and the parent would need to agree on, that this was the right placement for the child. And then there's an assessment and screening process to make sure that we could meet their needs in our program.
Just seeing the pictures of those children who seem so happy and content to be there, it's just, I feel like crying. It's wonderful. The job that you're doing is wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you. I personally am glad you're moving to Wilmington. That's wonderful for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sure. Any other questions? Mr. Mullis?
The range, ages 3 to 22, how is that managed? It's such a wide range.
Well, that's part of our problem right now, is that we have classrooms. We started the school, Jamie started the school years ago, but those kids have grown up, and so now we have a small facility that has room for 4 classrooms. And so there have been 6, 7, 8-year-olds that really need our service, but because of the 4-year age range in a classroom, we weren't able to accept those kids. So we would be able to have another classroom or 2 that maybe be able to serve some of those younger kids.
I think for clarifying purposes, you can only put a certain 18-month range in a classroom, and so you've got to stay to that, and if you only have 4 rooms, then you're very limited as to, you can't put like.
Can't have a 6-year-old with a 12-year-old.
I was curious about. And what's the ratio of students to?
It's 1 student for every 2 staff, or I'm sorry, 1 staff for every 2 students.
All right, great.
And we have a classroom teacher for every 6 kids.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, as Superintendent Bennett explained to us, according to the Mass General laws, the local school committee must approve the school. And I'll just make a note, you've already alluded to it, that the school committee approval is neither an evaluation of program quality nor an endorsement of any particular school, but I think we have seen some positive things through your video and through your presentation. I don't know that I need to take a motion, or?
You do need.
I do need to take a motion on this.
Because they have to send a form.
Because they have to send a form in. Okay, great. Then I will ask for a motion for the Wilmington School Committee to approve the May Institute's move from Woburn to Wilmington. Mrs. Kane, motion, seconded by Mr. Talbot. All those in favor? That would be unanimous.
Yay.
Thank you very
so
much. And
welcome to Wilmington, and we hope that you'll be able to reach out to the schools, our school system as well, and we'd love to.
We look forward to being part of the community very much.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you so much.
Thank you, ladies. Appreciate it. Okay, public comment. We have some people in our audience tonight. Would anybody like to comment on our agenda? No? Okay, seeing no comment, we'll move on to subcommittee reports. And there's one item, we have received notification from the WTA that they would like to begin negotiations with us. I had Mrs. Burns and Mr. Bjork raise their hands to represent us on the negotiation team. Anybody else?
What was that again? I didn't.
For the negotiation team with the WTA, the union negotiations.
How many are needed for that?
Mrs. Button? How many?
We
could
usually have 2,
Just 2? Okay.
but if you want to join us, you're more than welcome. The meetings are late, like 3 to 5 o'clock.
Oh, yeah, see, I wouldn't be able to
Okay.
make that, unfortunately.
We'll get you
My
for an
issues.
evening committee.
Yeah, that's my issue, too. Okay, so we've got Mrs. Burns and Mr. Bjork that will represent us on the negotiation team with the WTA.
Great. I will get some dates for initial, and we probably should plan at some point an executive session just to talk about everyone's interests.
How we're gonna go.
The sooner the better. I'm the only person working 2, 3 jobs at the moment for work, so the more time they have to prepare. Thank you.
Okay. Other subcommittee reports? I know we had a holiday break, so I don't think too much happened in the past month. I am just going to pile it on us this evening and just give everybody the heads up. We do need to start thinking about a full-time superintendent, so we will need to begin our search. Stay tuned. I think we will add something to our next agenda so that we can begin that discussion. Okay. Any other subcommittee reports before I move on? Great. Correspondence. Mrs. Bonish, I'm going to ask you to read that for us.
Dear Ms. Broussard, Selectmen received your December 5th, 2016 correspondence noting your inability to attend their meeting last evening due to a personal conflict. Board members voted to invite you and/or other members of the school committee to their next meeting on January 9th, 2017. In the event January 9th is not workable, the board also meets on January 23rd, 2017, and would be available to meet with you. Board members would like to have an opportunity to discuss with you and/or other members of the school committee the rationale and the considerations that went into the decision to authorize the separation agreement between the Wilmington School Committee and former school superintendent Mary DeLay. Selectmen indicate that they have been questioned by residents about the nature of the agreement and the basis used to arrive at the terms of the separation agreement. While board members recognize that the final responsibility for making decisions related to the employment of the school superintendent rests with the school committee, they also have expressed a belief that a responsibility exists amongst elected officials to be transparent to the fullest extent possible in dealing with matters that have a financial bearing on Wilmington taxpayers. You may contact Beverly Dalton, Administrative Assistant, to schedule a time for the Selectmen's upcoming meeting. Thank you for your consideration of this invitation. Sincerely, Jeffrey Hull, Town Manager.
Great, thank you. I just want to share the timing of the receipt of that letter. This letter appears to have been hand-delivered, and it was placed in the school committee mailbox that exists in the Roman House. I retrieved it on Friday, January 6th. So being that timing, it was too late for us to respond in time for the January 9th meeting, which was this past Monday. As we were invited as a group this time, I could not respond on my own for the group. Obviously, nor could we discuss it outside of a public meeting because to do so would be a violation of open meeting. The previous summons that we had received that invited me to attend as chairperson, that was the December 12th Board of Selectmen meeting, was mailed to my home address. So even though we knew that this letter was coming, I expected it to come to my personal address. I did not expect it to be delivered to the Roman House. So I think with the holidays, perhaps things got a little bit lost in the shuffle. I will make note that I acted on the advice of our attorney, Attorney Waugh, to not attend the December 12th meeting, and that was despite the fact that I had a prior family commitment. The advice was not for me to attend. I did respond to that summons in writing in a timely manner. And for those who have kind of questioned where I was on the 12th, I was actually at the Wilmington Middle School Strings and Choral Concert, supporting my daughter and her classmates, which is where I should have been. I do want to share with the committee a timeline of the public records requests that we have received from the Board of Selectmen, because I'm not sure that everyone feels like they're all up to speed on exactly what's been happening. So I'm actually going to read the timeline for clarity. On November 30th of 2016, Jeff Hull, on behalf of the Board of Selectmen, made a public records request to Superintendent Benton for the separation agreement, along with any other documents relating to our former superintendent, Ms. Delai's separation. On December 2nd, 2016, Superintendent Benton responded to Mr. Hull with a redacted copy of the separation agreement, but denied any other documents as it was viewed as a personnel matter and therefore not public purview. On December 6, 2016, our attorney submitted the Board of Selectmen request to the Massachusetts State Supervisor of Public Records for review. He copied Attorney DiPietro, Ms. Delai's attorney. On December 12th, at their meeting, the Board of Selectmen requested an appeal to be filed to the Supervisor of Public Records by their attorney, Attorney Foskett. The Board of Selectmen also voted to file a public records request for our executive session minutes from October 3rd. That's of 2016. On December 27th of 2016, Superintendent Benton received an order from the Supervisor of Public Records to share the full version, which means unredacted, of the separation agreement for an in-camera inspection. On December 29th, 2016, Superintendent Benton denied the request for the minutes of October 3rd. This was the request made by the Board of Selectmen. On January 3rd of 2017, our attorney responded to the order from the Supervisor of Public Records sharing a non-redacted version of the separation agreement for that in-camera inspection. On January 9th, 2017, the Board of Selectmen voted to appeal the denial of the meeting minutes. On January 10th, that was yesterday, the Massachusetts State Supervisor of Public Records made a binding determination of the Board of Selectmen appeal regarding the separation agreement. Superintendent responded to Mr. Hull and shared a copy of the redacted separation agreement, which was hand-delivered to Mr. Hull's office yesterday. And when I say redacted separation agreement, it is slightly less redacted than the very first copy they received. So I'm going to ask Mrs. Bonish, our secretary, to read Mrs. Benton's letter to Mr. Hull, dated yesterday, January 10th.
Dear Mr. Hull, following an in-camera review of the requested separation agreement by the Office of the Supervisor of Public Records, I am forwarding to you a redacted version of the requested separation agreement. The redactions are consistent with developed case law, allowing the redaction of certain information that is personnel information and therefore exempt from disclosure. If you have any questions concerning this matter, please contact me. Sincerely, Joanne Benton.
Great, thank you. And could I also ask you to read paragraph 16 of the separation agreement? It starts on this page and continues to the second.
Ms. Delai shall maintain the confidentiality of this separation agreement and its terms, and shall not discuss nor disclose its contents, terms, or conditions with anyone except her legal counsel, financial advisors, her spouse, or as required by law. The committee shall maintain the confidentiality of this separation agreement and its terms, and shall not discuss nor disclose its contents, terms, or conditions with anyone, except the interim superintendent, legal counsel, the director of human resources, the business manager, the payroll specialist, or in response to a lawful subpoena or court order.
Thank you. So the Board of Selectmen will receive a copy of this separation agreement per the order of the Massachusetts State Supervisor of Public Records. Our attorney, again, has advised us not to attend any Board of Selectmen meeting to discuss this matter for the reasoning that we just read, paragraph 16, which is the non-disclosure agreement. And I will say, the Board of Selectmen have been frustrated that we haven't been able to respond or share any information. This is why, okay? So I think at this point, the last outstanding piece of business relating to this, the Supervisor of Public Records is going to review the executive session meeting minutes from October 3rd. If that individual orders that we release those executive session meeting minutes, then we will comply. Otherwise, the school committee has done all we can at this point. Okay? The other piece of correspondence we received, I will share with Mrs. Bonish to share.
In appreciation of our association during the past year, we extend our very best wishes to all of you for a happy holiday season. Best wishes to the committee this holiday season. Andy Waugh.
And he's our attorney. Thank you, Mrs. Bonish, for helping me with that. Okay, future meeting dates and agenda items. Our next meeting in January is January 25th.
Yes, and we will be presenting the recommended FY18 budget.
Okay, also in January, next week on January 19th, is it 6 o'clock, is the Facilities Management...
Facilities Master Plan.
Facilities Master Plan, thank you. The Facilities Master Plan recommendations. I believe that at this meeting, they will be discussing the school buildings. So I think it would be appropriate for as many of us to attend that meeting as possible. The other...
That's at the town hall.
That's at the town hall. Is it room 9?
Yeah.
And is it
No, it'll be in the big...
The auditorium? Okay. And is it 6 o'clock
6
start
o'clock.
time? Okay, great. And there's another meeting that we should all be aware of in January. That's January 30th. And that's our town manager, Jeff Hull's budget presentation. Again, that's at Town Hall, 7 o'clock?
Yes.
Okay. And has been our tradition. I would hope that as many of us that can attend will be there for that. We've traditionally always supported that evening. And then our first meeting of the school committee regular meeting in February will be February 8th, 2017. Did I miss any dates?
No, and we will do a budget hearing on February 8th. The January 25th is going to be a short meeting because traditionally, because of your attendance at the Selectmen's meeting, the 30th, the budget, we've usually only had one meeting in January, but where we need to present the budget, that will be the only item on the agenda for that evening.
Will we be discussing, you brought up earlier in the meeting, something about the superintendent piece. That will also be discussed.
Yeah, I think perhaps we ought to put that on there. We'll try to keep it concise.
Yep, that's fine.
My thought is perhaps if the committee desires, because there'll be a lot to discuss regarding the superintendent search, is that we schedule another meeting where we focus just on that, and maybe we can run it workshop style, so we can accomplish a lot. But think about that a little bit between now and the 25th. But we do need to get going on that. We did promise people after the holidays, and we're after the holidays. So there you go. Okay, with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Bonish, second. I got a whole bunch, everybody. All right, I'll take Mrs. Burns. All those in favor? We got unanimous there, Kim. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Very good.